Hi, my name is Alicia Hopkins, and this is my Little Women 2019 Mise en Scène critique. So to start with the cast, I have Greta Gerwig as the director, we have Saoirse Ronan as Jo March, Florence Pugh as Amy March, Emma Watson as Meg March, Eliza Scanlon as Beth March, Timothée Chalamet as Laurie, Meryl Streep as Aunt March, and I know Meryl Streep isn't necessarily a main character, but it's Meryl Streep, so she belongs in the main cast. And just a quick summary. This movie is about four sisters who go through trials and tribulations through sisterhood, learning about life, and finding a place in life and love. So for this critique, I'm going to be focusing on lighting and costuming. So for lighting, they utilize a lot of the same techniques that other films do to differentiate good and bad moments in the movie, or dark and light moments per se. So on the left side, for example, we see Amy March in this really intense scene setting the stage for her and Joe's relationship the rest of the film. You see her burning her work. So we see this low-key lighting, this really high contrast, harsh lighting that has almost got a Halloween effect with the lighting coming from the bottom, making her look more like a villain. So that's intensifying this scene in this image. Versus on the right side, we see Amy March and Laurie hanging out and rekindling a friendship later in life. And this is a really light, happy moment. This is really low contrast. This is going to be a high-key lighting, not a lot of shadows or anything. And they utilize these lighting types for these types of scenes throughout the movie as well. So they also use it as a way to differentiate locations throughout the movie. So we see New York consistently as this like darker blue shade as well with the wardrobe in New York. Whereas we see indoor lighting to be what you experience in a typical indoor lighting. It's going to be a lighter yellow, and outside it's going to be more warm and glowy. So even with the darker scenes like indoors, we still see them utilizing low-key and high-key lighting. For example, on the left side we see high-key lighting during this playful moment where they perform their play. There's not a lot of shadows in the background, not a lot of high contrast. So even though the image itself is a little bit darker, it's still considered a high-key lighting style. Versus on the right side, they're still inside, but it's more of a low-key lighting because there's a higher contrast, especially between their faces, the shadows behind them, making the image look a little bit more sharp, intensifying, again, the scene. And this is when Beth is sick. So the exception to this rule, I'm sorry for the blurry photo, but the exception to this rule is going to be when Jo March and Laurie have a falling out on the hillside, and they're talking about Laurie has love for Jo that Jo cannot reciprocate. This image or this scene feels really intense and feels like it should be replicated with the lighting, but it's not. And in my opinion, it's because although this scene is intense and is almost like an ending for an era for them, an ending for a friendship, it is the beginning of something new. And at the end, it ends up being a positive thing because they find other things outside of each other. So moving on to costumes and hair. So they use costuming and hair to differentiate things like age and class and things like that. So on the left side, we have the sisters who are more lower middle class per se, and they're cottons and wools and mixed colors, a little bit hodgepodge of a look, not very structured. Their hair is more flowing, not put together. Whereas on the right side, we see girls that are the same age as Meg March who are in these structured silk gowns with frills and their high buns and whatnot. We also see them differentiate the ages between the girls. On the left, you see their hair is more free-flowing, a little bit more youthful of looks, again, less structured. On the right side, we see the girls' hair is more high up and tight. It's more mature, per se, and more formal looking than the left side. We also see they wear less colorful items than they did when they were young. And to contrast to the girls that Meg was in the ball with, they were not wearing the frills and stuff. And these are a little bit more structured as well. And then within that too, we see Meg is a school teacher's wife, and so she's wearing not a fine silk, and it's not a fun color, it's just this gray structured dress. Jo always wears a little bit more masculine of looks and a little bit darker of color, so this makes sense for Jo with the vest and the darker dress. And on the left, Amy is in a better financial position with Aunt March helping out, so she's in a fine silk dress with a little bit more structure to it, a little bit more detail, and a more fun color. So they also use it to differentiate personality traits in a sense. So with Jo March specifically, again, she dresses more masculine. So she wears blazers, ties, and vests and things like that, whereas all of her sisters wear more traditionally girly things, and this differentiates her as a character and her goals throughout the movie as well. So that's going to be all of my critique for my mise en scène presentation for Little Women. And these are going to be my citations. I will link them as well, but just a quick little scroll through so you guys can see them. And that's it. Thanks for watching.